Hello, Dr. Richard Bandler, co-creator of NLP, the genius behind the NLP. It's a very pleasure to talk with you. I'm a little nervous and apologize because I'm not fluent in English, but let's try. I have a question.
Everything. It's good to talk to you, and I'm glad to be here. Take a deep breath and relax, and it's up to you. You can ask whatever you want.
Okay, thanks a lot. And we have together first time in 2014 in Cartagena, Colombia. Get the life you want the first time. Second time in Orlando, Florida, also 2014. And 2018. First time, get the life you want. Second time, tourism investment, training, and recycling the training. This time is our fourth meeting. May I see this one? So I have any questions for you, for me and my students. Let's start. Doc, Richard, how would you define NLP for a Brazilian who does not know it yet?
Well, it doesn't really matter if you're Brazilian or not. I made up the word so I get to define it. In the American dictionary, the Merriam-Webster, they define it as a self-help technique, and I think that's entirely wrong. In the Oxford English Dictionary, they asked me, and I defined it as the study of subjective experience. It's the study of successful conscious and unconscious thought patterns that lead to successful behaviors. And whereas psychology is in the business of going archaeologically backwards, figure out where your problems came from, and making it so that you understand them, neuro-linguistic programming looks at successful people, whether it's spelling or sports or sales or getting over a phobia, any behavior that's successful. We studied the both conscious and unconscious patterns that produce it and train other people to repeat it.
Great, great. Too many people ask me, NLP is a kind of therapy. What do you say about this?
Well, it can be used by psychotherapists. I provided a great wealth of tools that psychotherapists use, but neuro-linguistic programming itself is what produced those tools. It's not what those tools are. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is both a methodology and an attitude by which we look at things that are supposed to be impossible and make them possible. We do this by finding the very best people and finding out what they're doing and teaching other people to do it. And sometimes we have to just imagine what it would be and try new things. Over the past 50 years that I've been working, I've provided counselors, psychotherapists, coaches of all ways, shape, and forms, a litany of techniques. So many so that there's some I don't even use anymore. They're too antiquated. And I don't intend to stop doing that, but we have much broader horizons. Neuro-linguistic programming itself began by studying the work of Noam Chomsky, who had built the first mathematical model that defines how we both produce and understand language unconsciously. Not the way it's supposed to be like they do in grammar, but the way it's done neurologically. From that model, we built a meta model by studying the kinds of questions psychotherapists asked to get people beyond difficulties, and built a meta model of language which ended up being an intense and very successful problem-solving tool. And if you use the meta model successfully, you get to define what's in the map that people have built in the world, as opposed to the world itself. Because most of our limitations are in how we're thinking. And if you know what you're thinking, then you can either change what you're thinking, or you can start thinking about even more things than you've been thinking about. That a map of California isn't California, it's a representation of it. Our thoughts are not the world, they're a representation of the world. And some are more useful than others. The brain is designed to make things familiar, so that when you learn how a chair works, everything that's kind of a chair, we know what to do with it. Sometimes we overgeneralize and we create limitations that we don't need. Sometimes we haven't built generalizations that we need to be able to function. And all of the descriptions of those and the calculus behind them is what neuro-linguistic programming is. The techniques used by psychotherapists, those are a trail of what's been left behind by the discipline itself.
Very good, thank you. Well, you've created many human development technologies. So I'd like to know, what are your thoughts about what could come up in this area now?
Well, I don't think there's any limit to that, to tell you the truth. It depends, because neuro-linguistic programming doesn't make them. We do as neuro-linguistic programmers. And there are some out there that are studying how to become a better athlete. There are some that are studying how to become a better architect. Some are studying how to become a better salesman. Right now, I seem to be spending a lot of time with this pandemic thing, teaching people to be able to remember we're going to get beyond it. And that the way to get through difficult things is to make plans to be even more successful as you get beyond them. That just being afraid is never enough. Your nervous system is designed to have fears, and at the most basic level, so you can run away from it or so that you can fight with it. And when you get more sophisticated than living in the jungle and running away from beasts or fighting beasts, then you have to use your imagination to make sophisticated plans about how you're going to adapt to the situation and move beyond it, and to build big, strong beliefs that, and to stay in a relatively happy state, because your immune system works the best when you're the happiest. That's all there is to it. We proved it with medical science. I wrote a book called The Secrets of Being Happy, where almost a third of the book defines and brings up all the medical research that have proved that not only does stress make us sick, but being happier makes us healthier, makes us get over surgery faster, recover from illness better, that being cheerful is something that makes our immune system work ever so much better. So we all have a responsibility right now to stay as cheerful as possible and to plan, because human beings are the happiest when they have a plan and a purpose that goes into the future. We shouldn't just regretting what happened to our businesses. We should plan and adapt to the present situation and plan and adapt for a better future.
Wow, thank you again. Your book, The Secrets of Being Happy. I'm reading.
Happen to have one there. How convenient is that?
Let's talk about this book later. And I make appointments and make doubts about this. One of my most favorite books. Let's talk about books later. Well, what has motivated you to create and to continue to develop these technologies?
I enjoy it. Simple answer, I enjoy it. Since I was a little kid, I've always enjoyed fixing things and optimizing things. When I was 16 and I got my first car, the first thing I did was do things that doubled the horsepower and changed the camber of the wheels so it handled better, and put better paint on it and better seats in it. To me, the notion that something can be made better just appeals to my inner nature, and that some people are satisfied with things the way they are, and I don't find that in and of itself satisfying. When for 50 years, most of my clients have come from psychologists or psychiatrists, social workers, who had been through a litany of psychotherapies and psychiatrists and been given up on. And when they would bring them to me, some of these clients would come in and say, I've tried everything, nothing is going to work. And I would always look back at them and go, yet, because that's a very powerful word when you use it by itself. And I just look at them and go, yet, because if they don't believe that things, because believing is very powerful. Every drug is tested against placebos. And to a certain degree, almost every drug, placebo will work to some degree as well as a drug, and in some cases even better. So, and doctors believe they work because you're deceived. Actually, they work because you believe. Never underestimate the power of a really strong belief. And I have the belief that just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. If we had that belief in science, we'd have gotten nowhere. They used to say in America there was an idiom, you know, like apple of the eye and idioms. I'm sure there are plenty of them in Portuguese that at the surface sound like nonsense. But the idiom for impossible used to say it's as impossible as trying to put a man on the moon. Well, actually now America has been there and back 7 times. And we're going back again. That's the big plan. In fact, we're planning to go to Mars. And so what was impossible in one day becomes possible the next. And it does so because powerful people methodically use their imagination and make plans to make the impossible possible. With every client that comes in, whether they were schizophrenic, depressed, phobic, didn't matter to me. I just believed that with what they were thinking now, it was impossible. But if I change the way they think, it changes how they feel and therefore changes what they can do. Their case history was only a list of what didn't work. It wasn't about the patient. It was about what the doctors had tried. So all of those things I didn't need to do. It saved me a lot of time. And the meta model is a powerful tool to examine what's in somebody's mind and what's not there. And more importantly, once you know what's not there, you know what to put in. Very often the answers to how to help people was incredibly simple. Part of that was I was not indoctrinated in the basic belief that's in most psychologies. It all started with Sigmund Freud many, many years ago. He got the idea that you could talk people out of problems. And talking therapy, it was a good idea. He separated the conscious from the unconscious, went into the unconscious and in their history and in their dreams to search for a root cause, just like a medical doctor would, to find out that X caused Y. Believing that if you understood what's wrong with you and where it came from, poof, magically that understanding would produce change. Now, this has been tried for almost 100 years. Unfortunately, it's a great idea that doesn't work. And most modern psychotherapies, when I started out, I think there was like 160 schools of psychotherapy. There was TA and Gestalt and Z. There were so many of them. Some of them lived and died in less than 5 years because, unfortunately, while they had a good theory, the theory all had the same foundation. It was a way of producing insight that if you went, aha, I understand my problem, it was supposed to disappear. And it's been tried, just don't work. And without new thinking, you do not get new behavior. And that's my rule. You have to change the way you think. It will change the way you feel. And therefore, you'll be free enough to do new things. To me, it's about mental freedom. The chains of modern societies, except for a few, if you go to North Korea, they have very serious rules. They're starting to build them in the United States because they're trying to take away our freedom of speech and other things. There are now so many words you're not allowed to say, it's ridiculous. But the real chains of the free are inside their minds, that we build fears, generalize those fears, become immobilized by those fears when we're only born with 2 natural fears, loud noises and falling. All the rest are learned. Some are good. Don't cross the street when the truck is coming. Good fear to have. But never cross the street, that's overgeneralizing.
Very good, very good. I really appreciate the answer. Well, what can a person do to achieve an extraordinary life?
Well, you see, to me, it's not, there ain't one thing you can do that. If you want an extraordinary life, you have to be able to look at yourself and think that the limitations you have are silly. And if you want your life to be more extraordinary, you have to figure out what the currency of it is. And to me, the currency of living is how you spend each and every single moment. And my entire life, when people tell me stuff is impossible, well, gosh, we have so many examples of people being wrong about that. And I mean, in every domain that you could think of. In science, what we thought was impossible became possible over and over and over again. More things have become real from science fiction than have not become real in the world of science. That, you know, we build equations and theorems and even laws. There are laws of physics. And I don't know who made these up, but the idea that physics has a law is really a misunderstanding of the universe. There are patterns in the universe, but at some time and some place, they all exceeded. We used to believe that the ohms and amps and that a certain amount of resistance would be dissipated as heat, and that ultimately, with that particular equation, that equation applies, except when you hit a certain temperature, the whole equation changes. It turns out at some point in time, all relationships change non-linearly rather than linearly. In Newton's universe, we believed everything was linear. Einstein, it became relative depending upon who's thinking about it and where they are in the universe thinking about it and how fast they're moving. And in the world of NLP, if you can change the way you think about things, then you can change miraculous ideas. That, you know, what I do daily now in 1970 would have appeared miraculous if I didn't teach anyone else to do it. I would have been able to cure people of phobias. And if I made a religion out of it, it would have been called a miracle. Since it's neuro-linguistic programming, it's considered a methodology. When used by a psychotherapist, I don't know if when they do it for the 5th time, if they still look at it as a miracle. I still do after 50 years. When I see somebody change in front of my eyes with a few simple instructions and they go from being terrified to holding a big spider in their hand, I still think it's amazing. When I take somebody who believes they have no artistic ability and 20 minutes later they're holding up a painting that's fabulous and an audience is applauding, I think that's miraculous. And if you take the magic out of the moments of your life, then what happens is you don't live an extraordinary life. Now, you can't just look at a bottle and go, that's amazing. You have to be able to do things that impact the world around you and to notice which things are powerful and which things are mundane. When I was hired years ago to model psychics, one of the things that was funny about them is almost all of them insisted that every intuition they had was correct. And if you would tell them this is right and this is way off, they would harp on the one that was off to try to bend it into something that worked, rather than refine their intuitions so that they got better at what they do. The secret to becoming extraordinary is to notice the difference between what you do well and what you don't do well, so you know what you need to learn next. And not to compare yourself with other people, but to compare yourself with yesterday. If you're a little bit better every day and a little bit better a week later, and you're constantly becoming better, you will end up spending more moments which are extraordinary and less moments feeling bad. It's an easy measure. If you feel bad more of the time than you feel good, you're not doing the right thing. That's all there is to it. Whether it's in a relationship, a job, or just thinking by yourself on your couch. If you're not curious, if you're not excited, see, we have potentially inside us an unlimited amount of every single feeling there is. It's not that we have feelings. They don't fall out of the sky like a plate. You do feelings. And if you don't practice making them stronger and making them weaker so you don't have to have them, and you don't take control of your neurology, you don't become extraordinary. Every extraordinary musician I've ever met practices and practices and practices getting good at what they do. The one feeling they have is being driven to do it better. They play and they get to a plateau and they'll look at something that looks amazing to me and go, that's just crap. I need to do it even better still. It's not that they're satisfied. Their purpose is to become exquisite. And it's not to be admired by other people, but to impress themselves that counts. The only person on this planet you have to impress is yourself. And if you feel better than you were 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a year ago, and you keep measuring yourself by becoming a better person and spending more of those moments living extraordinary. If you think about it, 30 billion years ago, in the Big Bang, everything came flying out of nowhere into somewhere, formed everything in the entire universe, which is so big we can't even imagine it. And on the distant galaxy, on the edge of the galaxy, in a little solar system, spinning at 177,000 miles an hour, on a planet spinning 25,000 miles an hour, is the perfect place for evolution to produce us. And we have more consciousness. Gold knows exactly what temperature to melt at, but it doesn't have a lot of choices. Animals can run away from a fire. They can seek out grass. They can move towards warmth. They have more consciousness than gold. We have more consciousness than any animal on the planet right now. And we can think about the beginning of the universe. We can think about the future. We can plan. We can imagine buildings and build them. We have unlimited possibility. The neurons in our brain, there are as many of them as there are stars in the sky, each one talking to 10 to 100 other ones. That means there's an unlimited amount of potential. Now that means there's a lot of potential for stupidity and a lot of potential for creative, intelligent thought. It has to be measured by whether you're feeling better or worse more of the time, and whether or not you're accomplishing good things on this planet. Because there's so many people telling me that something can't happen in the world right now because it might hurt somebody's feelings. I mean, in our country, they're taking down flags and statues and changing the names of sports teams because it might offend somebody. And I'm sorry, if you don't like something, don't think about it. To me, I'm trying to think of things that will make us better, not find new reasons to feel bad. And if a certain word makes you feel bad, change the way you feel, and nobody will have control over you ever again. I remember this from the women's movement many, many years ago. There was a whole bunch of women that were going to have a seminar, and the group leader didn't show up. And so I filled in for them, the wrong person for that, and used every politically incorrect word, chick, honey, all of this in the first 2 sentences. And all these women got really angry. And I said, look, if women's liberation is supposed to free you, it shouldn't give me the ability to make you feel bad with words. You should become freer. Those words should just make you think, what a dumb person. And then educate me so that you have a better world, rather than give me power over you. And when I said that, I said, I will teach you how to do this on purpose. And if you want, you can stay. Otherwise, get your money and go home. And all of them stayed, because what people ultimately want is greater freedom. And greater freedom doesn't come by coming up with new things to feel bad about. Many people do that in their marriage. By the time Virginia Satir used to send me couples, and they would come in and they'd be arguing over toast, for heaven's sakes. You know, one of them liked their toast the other way, and the other one would scrape the toast, and it drove them nuts. They kept coming up with new things, taking bad feelings and associating them with more things, rather than remember what magically got them together in the beginning. and building more magic moments instead of less. Time should be on our side. As we get older, we should get smarter. We may not be as physically fit as I was when I was 20, but I can, with less effort, accomplish much more because I'm a lot smarter at 70.
Wow. So you were my master. What will you say is the best strategy to change obsessive thoughts?
Well, to start with, there's that tricky word best. I don't think we know the best one yet. We have a whole bunch of them that we use. Most obsessive behavior comes from having large pictures that drive our feelings really fast and make us do things. Obsessive compulsive behaviors are rituals of comfort. So the person who opens and closes the door 17 times, or as I saw the other night, the person sitting at the table in a restaurant 6 feet away because they've moved the tables apart, took their hand cleaning lotion every 3 minutes and cleaned their hands. Now, unfortunately, I know what's in hand cleaner, and I know you really shouldn't be putting that much on your hands that often, that's probably more dangerous than the coronavirus. That, you know, you can't just keep putting things that seep into your skin, and especially some of the more commercial products have a lot of extra stuff in them you don't need. You know, a little alcohol and aloe vera is plenty. After that, they're called chemicals. And if you have trouble pronouncing the name, you may not want them absorbing into your skin. But you certainly, once he sat down at the table and cleaned his hands off, you know, at that point, it's moot. You know, you might want to clean your fork, but you certainly haven't touched anything new. And you know, it's not like I reached over and grabbed his hands, so he needs to clean them again. But it became a compulsive behavior because his fear, whatever he thought about in his head to produce fear, was comforted by redoing his hands. I had a client once many years ago that washed his hands like 2,000 times a day. Would go in the bathroom and wash his hands. And he literally, between washing his hands, wore plastic baggies over them. Not gloves, baggies. And I don't know what the difference between them was. And his thing was he had seen germs in a microscope and they looked so big and scary in the microscope, and he was sure they were everywhere. And what he didn't understand is he was making it impossible for his immune system to be able to fight these things. He was probably, as he got older, more likely to get sick than just about anybody because he spent all of his time sterilizing everything. He'd been the perfect housekeeper, you know, in coronavirus days. If you had a lot of visitors, he would be the guy to have around because he cleaned everything. But what forced him to feel compelled to do it was seeking comfort from the feelings he had. He had feelings of anxiety connected with pictures of getting sick and microbes and bugs. And the picture in his head was like a giant movie screen. These microscopic things in his picture in his head were 6, 7, 8 inches. And there were millions of them crawling in the picture towards him. And it gave him anxiety. So he would clean everything and then clean it again and then clean it again. I had a woman who cleaned the inside of drawers, and when she'd get done, she'd go, what if there's dirt I can't see? And she would clean it again. She spent all day cleaning the inside of every drawer in her kitchen, every drawer in the house, vacuumed repeatedly and cleaned carpet cleaner on it and cleaned it. Everything. She had plastic walkways. When her husband and son got home, she would make them dress in plastic clothes and walk into the house. She gave up being alive in the search for an impossible thing, which is to clean the outside world and make the inside world feel okay. And that's not how it works. When I taught her to bleach the pictures out, I said, oh, that picture in your head full of bugs. I said, imagine if you took the brightness knob, turned it all the way white, and imagine bleaching it out so that it can never bother you again. You do it quickly in your head. You wipe those pictures out. Shrink them down, white them out, shrink them down, white them out. Most compulsive behaviors will disappear.
Very good, very good. Excellent, excellent. Wow.
Of course, unless you're German, then you need something stronger.